He smirked, raised his glass, and said loud enough for the whole restaurant to hear, "I'll kiss the first waitress who walks by." Laughter followed, a dare born of ego and champagne. But when she turned the corner, calm, steady, and holding a tray full of empty promises, the room fell quiet. She didn't flinch. She didn't walk away. What she did instead, no one at that table will ever forget. If you've ever wondered what dignity looks like when it's dressed in silence, stay with us. Like, share, or leave a comment. Some stories deserve to be felt all the way through. Summit Dining wasn't just another restaurant. It was a landmark in Midtown Manhattan, perched above Lexington Avenue like a quiet, confident crown on its 10th anniversary. The place was packed. Chandeliers shimmered over polished oak, live cello mixed with the murmur of tailored conversations, and not a single napkin lay out of place. The city's wealthy investment bankers, real estate developers, media magnates gathered in clusters of dark suits and sparkling gowns, drinking handcrafted cocktails under candlelight. In a booth near the window, Adam Stone sat back, expression unreadable. 41, sharply dressed in charcoal gray. He looked like the kind of man who never entered a room. Rooms shifted to meet him. He had built Summit Dining from a crumbling bistro to a national brand. But tonight, he wasn't smiling. Across from him sat Ryan Brooks, his oldest friend and Summit's public relations director. Ryan was looser, younger in spirit, his grin the kind people liked and trusted without asking why. "You've been quiet all night," Ryan said, nudging his bourbon. "Tell me, have you officially forgotten how to enjoy your own party?" Adam didn't respond. He was scanning the room, seeing everything and nothing. "You know what your problem is," Ryan continued. "You've gone corporate. Boring. I remember when you used to take risks." Adam finally looked at him. "And what would you have me do? Ryan juggle martinis?" Ryan smirked. "No, just shake things up a little. How about this first waitress who walks in that door? You kiss her. No questions. No words. Just do it." Adam raised an eyebrow. "That's adolescent." "Maybe. But you used to be the guy who walked into a room and made it tilt. Now you're the guy who walks around with an umbrella even when it's sunny." There was a pause. Adam glanced toward the entrance, then leaned forward. "Fine," he said. "Let's play." At that exact moment, the side entrance near the kitchen opened. A young woman stepped inside carrying a tray covered in aluminum foil. She wore a simple white blouse, a maroon apron tied tightly around her waist, and black slacks. Her blonde hair was tucked into a low bun, a few wisps curling around her ears. She wasn't from Summit. That much was clear. The logo on the foil-lined carrier read Bella Trattoria. Adam didn't hesitate. He stood, stepped around their booth, and walked straight toward her. Emily Hayes wasn't expecting an audience. She had been asked to deliver a late catering request from the Italian restaurant across the street, 20 handmade cannoli for the chef's private tasting room. She had taken the job at Bella to support her younger sister's hospital bills, juggling shifts between waiting tables and doing light prep. Today was supposed to be just another delivery, in and out, until a man in a suit stood directly in her path. Before she could speak, his hand gently touched her elbow, and then he kissed her. It wasn't messy or long. It was intentional, silent, staged. Emily didn't step back. Instead, she returned the kiss, firmly, controlled. Her eyes never left his face. When she pulled away, her voice was quiet but sharp. "I know who you are, Mr. Stone. Try something like that again, and I'll make sure every single investor knows the man behind the press releases." She handed him the tray without waiting for his response. Then she walked away. Through the quiet room, past the polished bar, into the service elevator at the far end. She didn't flinch when the doors closed behind her. Adam stood still. Ryan leaned forward from the booth, half laughing, half stunned. "Well, she wasn't exactly what I expected." Adam didn't respond. Later, in the stillness of his penthouse, Adam poured himself a scotch and sat down in front of his office window, staring out at the grid of lights across the skyline. He had kissed strangers before. Too many, probably, But this woman had kissed him back with something different. Not confusion, not flattery, not disgust, conviction. He reached for his laptop, hesitated, then typed Bella Trattoria Manhattan staff. He didn't hit enter. She didn't look back. But he knew. Something had changed. The morning light hit the glass of the 28th floor office, like it always did, sharp, cold, and indifferent. Adam Stone sat behind a desk made of reclaimed walnut, staring at a contract he had reviewed 3 times without absorbing a single clause. A half-drunk coffee sat untouched near his elbow. Beyond the glass walls, Manhattan pulsed forward, unbothered by what had happened the night before. But Adam wasn't. The kiss had been a dare, nothing more. At least when it began. But it hadn't ended the way anyone expected. Especially not him. Her name still escaped him, but her eyes didn't. The steady way she looked at him after, the way her voice sliced through his polished sense of control that stayed downstairs, in a tighter, older kitchen, with peeling tiles and the scent of garlic clinging to every surface. Emily Hayes tied on her apron for another double shift at Bella Trattoria. One of the line cooks nudged her playfully. "So, you delivering desserts or breaking hearts now?" Emily rolled her eyes, trying to laugh it off. "It was a misunderstanding," she said. "Some stupid anniversary dare from the corporate circus next door." The others laughed. But when she turned away, her expression changed. There was something lingering behind her eyes, not the kiss itself, but the certainty in his touch, calculated, practiced, and the surprise when she didn't flinch. She didn't believe in accidents, not when it came to men like him. Up at Summit Holdings, Adam broke his silence with a single question. Who was that girl from last night? He wasn't asking Ryan this time. He asked Patricia, his assistant, who managed schedules, guest lists, and vendor contacts. She pulled up the delivery logs. Emily Hayes, from Bella Trattoria. They sent over cannoli. That was her first delivery here, apparently. Has she been paid? Yes. Any standing relationship with us? None. Adam closed the file. For a man who owned 3 restaurants, a stake in a hospitality tech company, and part of a vineyard in Napa, this should have been a footnote, yet he couldn't stop himself. He opened another tab. Bella Trattoria was family-run, known for being resistant to expansion. A small brick storefront with a reputation for handmade everything. He scrolled through their menu, their values, their staff photos. No corporate partners, no interest in franchising. That intrigued him. Across the street, Emily stood by the walk-in cooler, checking stock with a clipboard. Her manager, Lucia, leaned in from behind the counter. "We got an email from Summit," Lucia said. "They want to discuss a potential partnership for a lunch crossover event. Classy stuff. Think we should answer." Emily blinked. Did they mention a name? No. Just Summit Development Team. Her fingers tightened on the clipboard. "Let me know if they follow up. I'll think about it." Adam didn't send the email under his own name. He wanted to see what she would do without knowing it was from him. He told himself it was curiosity, but the truth was quieter, more complicated. That night, when he should have been reviewing investment options for the Chicago location, he walked instead to the window overlooking the street below. From this height, Bella Trattoria looked like a brick-shaped afterthought, dwarfed by glass towers. But the light spilling out from its windows was warm, real. He stood there for a long time, hands in his pockets, watching for someone he wasn't ready to admit he'd wronged or admired. She hadn't answered yet, but he knew. It wasn't over. The invitation came in on a Thursday morning, slipped between a stack of invoices and a new delivery schedule. Lucia, the manager at Bella Trattoria, waved the email in front of Emily with a sly smile. "Summit wants a lunch meeting," she said. "Some kind of cross-brand idea. They asked for you to come along." Emily narrowed her eyes. Did they say why nope? Just said someone from product development would meet with us? Said it was informal? Emily hesitated, then nodded. She wasn't sure why she felt it, but something about it didn't feel like business. The next day, she stepped into Summit's high-rise conference suite on the 43rd floor. Her dress was simple charcoal gray, modest cut, nothing flashy. Her hair was pulled back, the way she always wore it for work. But her grip on the folder in her hands was tighter than usual. Through the glass, Manhattan stretched in every direction, clean lines and towering steel making her feel like she'd stepped into a different country. Adam was already there, seated at the far end of the table with a window at his back. The light caught the edges of his navy blazer, his shirt open at the collar. He didn't stand, just gestured to the seat across from him. Lucia offered a polite greeting and moved to join Natalie, Summit's head of product, at the far end. That left Emily with Adam. "I'm surprised you came," he said. "I didn't come for you," she answered, settling into her chair. "I came for the food program. Bella's looking to support more schools in the district." Adam nodded once. "That's good. So are we." The silence that followed was taut, not aggressive, not defensive, just unsettled. He glanced at the folder in her hands. "Have you ever thought about opening your own place?" She looked up. "I've thought about it, but I'm not interested in charity disguised as opportunity." His jaw tensed, but he didn't react. "I wasn't offering charity, no," she asked. "Because what I remember is you kissing me in front of a room full of strangers and calling it a joke. And now I'm sitting in a glass tower, surrounded by people who think a local kitchen is a cute PR move." That landed harder than she intended. Adam leaned back, studying her like someone trying to translate a language he never learned. "Would you believe me if I said I wasn't proud of that moment? I'd believe you," she said. "But that's not the same as changing." At that moment, Natalie entered the room, holding 2 coffee cups and talking into a headset. She looked at Emily and raised an eyebrow. "Didn't think you were his type," she said lightly, not stopping to gauge the silence she walked into. Emily stood, ignoring the burn in her cheeks. "I have a shift in 20 minutes, she said, gathering her things. This was informative. Adam stood too, more quickly than she expected. "Wait," he said, voice low. She stopped, didn't turn. "I'm not trying to choose anyone," he said. "I'm trying to understand why. For the first time in a long while, I can't stop thinking about something I can't control." She didn't speak, didn't move. "I meant what I asked," he said, "not because you owe me anything, but because I think the city would be better with a restaurant that has your name on it." Emily turned her head slightly, just enough to show that she heard him. Then she walked out without another word. Back at Bella Trattoria that evening, she slipped a folder onto Lucia's desk. Inside was a handwritten outline for a small cooking class series, something she'd been working on for months but hadn't shown anyone, not until now. She said it was time they stopped waiting for outside support. But when she stepped away from the counter, she glanced out the window toward Summit's building, eyes resting for a moment on the 43rd floor. She didn't look back, but he knew. Something had shifted in her silence. The office was unusually quiet that morning. The usual hum of conversation outside Adam's door had dulled into soft shuffling, and even the espresso machine in the corner stayed silent. Adam sat at his desk with the folder Emily had left behind. The pages were thick with handwritten notes, class schedules, food costs, student caps, even ideas for neighborhood outreach. She had written everything in ballpoint, slanted to the right, letters tight but clear, like someone who never expected to be listened to but needed to say it anyway. Something about the handwriting made his chest tighten. It wasn't nostalgia, it was memory. Adam opened his laptop and searched through old files in the Summit archive. Not public reports, the private records, the ones buried in early-stage investment logs and internal memos. He scrolled past numbers, past reports on yield and burn rate, until he saw it. June 2017. Summit Holdings had withdrawn support from a small franchise outpost in Queens, part of a low-yield hospitality venture his father had pressured him to clear from the books. Adam remembered the justification: poor location, outdated concept, labor costs too high. He had approved it in less than 3 minutes. A signature on the dotted line. That was all it took. He clicked on the staff list. The manager's name was blank, but under lead kitchen, there it was. M. Hayes, head cook. He pushed his chair back, His breath came slower now. His body didn't move for a long time. He stared at the screen until the light from the window shifted across the floor. Hayes. He hadn't known. That's what he told himself. But ignorance didn't make damage any less real. He stood, walked to the far shelf, and pulled down a storage box with old press kits and investor updates. On top, a photo from a tasting event in 2016. That same location in Queens. A woman with graying hair and a white chef's coat, holding a ladle midair, grinning towards someone off camera, Emily's cheekbones, her smile. It hit him then, not just that he had signed away a job, but that he had signed away someone's foothold in this city, maybe their pride. He sat back down, the folder still on his desk. There was no fixing that past. But the proposal in front of him offered something else a start. Even if it wasn't about redemption, it was about not repeating what was already broken. He pulled a Summit Foundation letterhead from his drawer, scrawled a note. Excellent concept. Approval for community seed funding enclosed. Consider initial class dates for April. You have something worth building. He signed only with the foundation's stamp, not his name. Then he slid the folder into an envelope and called for a courier. It would be hand-delivered to Bella Trattoria before close of day. Across town, Emily was finishing prep for the dinner rush. Her apron was dusted with flour from the homemade focaccia, and she had a smear of tomato on her left wrist she hadn't noticed yet. Lucia handed her the envelope without comment. Emily opened it slowly, half expecting a rejection. Instead, she found the approval letter, neat, clean, formal, but not impersonal. There was care in the phrasing. No excess, no pretense. Just enough to say this matters. She turned the page over, looking for a name. There wasn't one. Just the foundation seal. Emily stared at it a moment longer, lips pressed into a thin line. She felt the questions forming, but she didn't voice them. In Adam's office, the window lights had shifted again. He stood in front of the skyline, hands in his pockets, trying to convince himself that the past could stay buried if he did enough in the present. But some things didn't stay buried. Some things waited in the silence between names. She didn't know it yet, but she would. The rain came fast that afternoon, one of those spring downpours that made the streets shine black and the sky sag like a soaked tarp. Inside the small kitchen at the edge of Fulton and Eastern Parkway, just behind the Brooklyn Central Library, the lights flickered slightly but held steady. The smell of tomato and basil filled the room. Emily moved through the kitchen with a quiet rhythm. She wore an old sweatshirt under her apron, sleeves pushed up, and a towel tucked into her waistband. Around her, 5 neighborhood kids stood at cutting boards, trying to peel carrots without sending them flying. The soup simmered steadily on the back burner minestrone, her mother's recipe. It wasn't just about food. It was something to hold on to, something warm in a city that often felt too fast for people like her. The class was part of the community project she'd proposed. With the funding finally approved, she could buy real ingredients and open a few more slots for neighborhood kids. She didn't know who had pushed it through. The foundation letter came unsigned, but it didn't matter, not today. Then, near the door, someone appeared. He wasn't part of the building, didn't fit the scene. White button-down rolled at the sleeves, jeans a shade too clean, ball cap pulled low, but the way he stood, hands in pockets, not interrupting, made it clear he wasn't there to impress, just to observe. Emily saw him and froze for half a second. Adam. He didn't wave, didn't smile. She nodded slightly. 10 minutes later, as the kids sat down with bowls and bread, he approached. His voice was even careful. "I'd like to learn how to make that," he said. "But I'm not asking for a favor." Emily glanced at him. "Then wash your hands and grab an onion. No more, no less." She handed him a dull kitchen knife and a small cutting board. Adam stood at the sink for longer than necessary. When he turned back, there was water still dripping down his wrists. He peeled quietly, slicing the onion with the stiffness of someone used to sharper tools and softer surroundings. But he didn't complain. Emily worked beside him, correcting only when she had to. She noticed he flinched when a splash of oil popped from the pan but didn't step away. From the far end of the kitchen, a little girl with braids tugged on Emily's sleeve. "Miss Emily, who's he?" she whispered. Emily didn't look up. "Someone who wants to learn how to cook." But her voice softened at the end. When the pot was finally filled, Adam stirred with both hands. There was something awkwardly deliberate in the motion, like he knew he wasn't doing it right, but didn't want to stop. He looked over. "This recipe, it's your mother's." Emily nodded. "She's still with you?" "No," she said, "passed 5 years ago. Cancer." Adam lowered his eyes. "I'm sorry. She taught me to cook, then got sick before I finished school. So I left. Been working ever since." He didn't ask what she had given up. He already knew. Time, education, safety nets, all the things people in his world took for granted. "You have family?" he asked. Emily wiped her hands. "Little sister, Lily, 17. Got into an accident last year, hit and run. Spinal injury. She's at Mount View, waiting for a second evaluation." Adam paused, something catching in his chest. "Mount View's not great," he said carefully. "There are specialists who I don't need names." Emily cut in, not harshly, just enough, especially not from someone who once thought a kiss was a game. He didn't argue. The rain outside hit harder now. She poured 2 bowls, set them down on the steel prep counter. For a moment, neither of them said anything. Then Adam took a spoonful. It burned slightly going down, too hot, but he didn't flinch. "It's good," he said. She offered a tight nod. "I know." When the kids were picked up and the kitchen cleared, Emily stayed to mop. Adam stepped aside to let her work. Then, as she wrung out the mop near the back door, she looked over her shoulder. "Why did you really come today?" she asked. "I wanted to see something I didn't build," he said, outside. The rain had turned to mist. Emily didn't answer. Later, alone in his car, Adam sat parked beneath a blinking yellow streetlight. Drops slid slowly down the windshield, the city's rhythm muted by weather. He opened his phone and typed one sentence into a search bar: "Best spinal rehab hospitals in New York." He didn't hit enter right away. He just watched the rain blur the edges of everything that once seemed so clear. The morning sun barely warmed the pavement when Emily's phone buzzed. She was stirring pancake batter in Bella Trattoria's kitchen, planning to leave early for the community center's weekend class. The message came from a nurse at Mount Sinai. Lily had been accepted for a preliminary spinal evaluation free of charge. Emily stood motionless for a second, the whisk dripping batter onto the counter. She hadn't applied for this. The nurse said the funding came from a newly refreshed grant program, Summit Foundation listed as its largest donor. Emily's throat tightened. She didn't say thank you. There was no one on the line to hear it, but her voice shook when she asked for the appointment time. That afternoon, in the familiar hum of the community kitchen, she was prepping cutting boards when Adam appeared again without warning, but not unwelcome. He wore jeans this time, sleeves rolled, a box of vegetables in hand, carrots, onions, fresh basil, zucchini, and 3 large tomatoes still wet from the market. No assistant, no explanation. "I figured you'd need supplies," he said, placing the box on the counter, "and I owed you a shirt." Emily didn't answer right away. She took the tomatoes, inspected one, and gave a half nod. "Wash the dirt off first," she said, "and then chop." The class had doubled in size since last week. Kids in oversized aprons gathered around the counters, waiting for instructions. Emily guided them through prepping ingredients, while Adam chopped in silence next to her, slower than before but more careful. At one point, he leaned to drain a pot of blanched tomatoes and knocked it straight into his own chest. The red pulp exploded across his white shirt, seeping into the cotton like a spreading stain. Gasps turned into laughter. One of the kids clapped, another pointed and shouted. Chef Disaster Adam looked down, stunned, then laughed with them, really laughed. No restraint, no rehearsed charm, just a man covered in tomatoes in front of a room full of amused children. Emily smiled despite herself. She wiped her hands on the hem of her apron, turned to grab a towel and paused. Her fingers tightened around the cloth. She looked at him again, saw the way his eyes crinkled when he laughed, the ease he'd never shown at Summit. It made her chest twist. She turned away quickly, muttering, "You ruined that shirt. I've ruined worse," he said, still laughing. They finished the soup together. This time, Adam knew when to stir and when to step aside. The kids huddled around bowls on the floor, telling stories between bites. Emily watched Adam crouch next to a little boy who had trouble holding his spoon. He steadied the child's hand without a word. It was that quiet gesture that got to her. Later, while cleaning up, Adam carried 2 trays to the sink. Emily followed with a stack of spoons. Their hands brushed under the faucet brief, accidental, and yet neither moved away. They stood there, fingers wet, not saying anything. Outside the window, the sun broke through the clouds. Light poured across the floor in a narrow beam, catching specks of flour still floating in the air. Emily felt something shift inside, like a knot loosening without warning. Then came the sound of a door opening. Natalie stood by the frame, sunglasses still on, having paused just before stepping fully into view. She tilted her head slightly, watching the scene, the laughter, the shared touch, the ease that didn't belong to boardrooms or business lunches. Emily didn't see her. Adam did. But he said nothing, just turned back to rinse the bowl in his hands, as if maybe some things needed to stay small a little longer. The kitchen at Bella Trattoria smelled of oregano and something searing in the back oven when Carla, one of the evening servers, leaned across the prep counter with a look that wasn't exactly curiosity, it was sharper. "You and Adam Stone." "What's going on?" Emily didn't answer at first. She kept stirring the marinara, letting the sauce bubble a second longer than it needed to. Carla waited. "People are starting to talk." Emily turned slowly, eyes steady. "Let them." "Are you denying it?" "I'm saying," Emily replied, "I'm not in the business of explaining myself to people who already decided who I am." Carla backed off, but not without a final shot. "Just hope he doesn't get bored. Men like that don't stay long in kitchens like ours." When she left, Emily stayed behind, spoon still in hand. She wasn't angry, just hollow, the kind of tired that crept into the chest, not the bones. She didn't owe anyone an explanation, but she realized, suddenly, she hadn't told herself the truth either. At Summit, in a conference room of glass and brushed steel, Ryan leaned against the wall while Adam stared out at the skyline. The sun was sinking behind the towers, bathing everything in a gold that looked expensive and temporary. "You need to be careful," Ryan said. "This isn't just some quiet fling. You think clients won't talk when they see you with someone they think doesn't belong." Adam turned. "What exactly do they think she is?" "Not the issue. It's what they think you are when you're with her." Adam's lips tightened. "I didn't build this company so I could hide behind their assumptions." "You built it with their money," Ryan said, "and their expectations." Adam didn't respond. He sat down, unbuttoned the top of his shirt, and loosened his tie like it had started choking him halfway through the conversation. Later that night, back in his apartment, the top 2 floors of a pre-war building near Bryant Park, he stood barefoot near the window, phone in hand. No music, no wine, just the hum of the city below and something pressing at his ribs that felt like guilt or hesitation. He typed, without planning the words, "I want you to see my world. Not to show off, just so it's not invisible." He stared at the message for a minute, then hit send. The reply didn't come immediately. When it did, it was short. When he exhaled, not relief, not quite. A few hours later, she received the address 580 Lexington Avenue, Summit Holdings, penthouse level. There were no directions, no explanation, just a line that read, "Use the north elevator. The code is 8241. Don't tell anyone." Emily reread it 3 times, then set the phone down and went back to folding Lily's laundry. She told herself she wouldn't go, but the way her hands trembled told a different story. Emily didn't tell anyone she was going. She said she was running errands for the center, slipped her phone into her purse, and took the 6th train to 51st Street. From there, it was a short walk to the Summit Holdings Tower. The doorman didn't ask questions. Her name was already on the list. She rode the elevator alone. The mirrored walls reflected a woman she barely recognized black dress. Hair pinned up. Not too formal, but not something she'd wear to work either. The floor numbers glowed steadily higher, and with every stop she passed, her fingers closed tighter around the strap of her bag. The elevator chimed at the penthouse. When the doors slid open, she stepped into silence. The space was nothing like she'd imagined. No boardroom, no cold lighting, no display of wealth in the usual sense. Instead, she stood in a glass garden, tall windows wrapped around the room, giving view to a city lit in gold and gray. Between the panes, green vines curled along trellises. Pots of lavender and mint lined the walls. There were no assistants, no cameras. Just Adam, waiting near the edge, sleeves rolled to his elbows, looking like he'd been standing there long before she arrived. "I tried to grow rosemary," he said without turning. "It never took. Someone told me it needs commitment. Too many days gone, and it forgets how to survive." She walked slowly, not answering. The air smelled faintly of soil and lemon balm. He finally looked at her. "Thank you for coming. I haven't said anything yet. You didn't have to. Showing up is enough." She followed him past a small stone bench and toward the back wall, where a large photograph hung under a pool of soft light. Emily paused, her chest clenched before she could place why. It was a restaurant. Old signage, weathered wood, the name still visible beneath peeling paint, Hayes & Sons. She stepped closer. Her voice dropped. "This is—" Adam didn't move. "This was our family's place," she said. "Queens. My mom used to cook here." "I know," he said. "I found the photo in an archive last week. Had it restored." Emily turned, slowly, her hands cold. Why Adam held her gaze. "Because I think I was part of the reason it closed." She blinked. "My name's on the papers. I didn't run the deal. But I signed off on the exit pulling capital from smaller locations, one of which was your mother's." Silence fell. So quiet she could hear the hum of the greenhouse fans. "I didn't know who you were when we met. Not until after. But I should have looked sooner." Her lips parted, then closed. She walked back to the photo, touched the frame. Her mother's handwriting was still visible on the menu board, a chalk scrawl offering meatloaf and pie. "She worked double shifts to keep that place open," Emily said. "When it closed, she took whatever job she could get. I dropped out for a while. We lost the house." "I'm sorry," Adam said. She turned back, her eyes no longer soft. "Are you sorry because I'm standing here now, or because it actually matters to you?" He didn't flinch. Both. The word hung heavy. Emily exhaled, then stepped back from the photo. She looked around again at the plants, the space, the quiet care in how it was arranged. It wasn't just money. It was time. Then her eyes returned to his. "So, you're Stone, the son of the man who made the call, the face behind the name in the email that ended our family's dream." Adam nodded once. "That's who I was." She took a step back, folding her arms not in defense, but to stop them from trembling. Her voice was calm, but something had shifted underneath. "Then I guess now I know what kind of garden you really grow up here." He didn't answer. She walked past him toward the elevator, each step measured, heels tapping lightly on the polished floor. She didn't look back, but he knew. Something had changed. Emily didn't speak a word in the elevator. The glass doors closed behind her with a soft hiss, but in her chest, everything felt loud, every breath, every thought, every beat of her heart slamming against the silence. When the car reached the ground floor, she walked out without looking back. Her heels tapped the marble like punctuation marks she didn't intend, sharp, final. Outside, the sky had shifted. The summer haze gave way to evening clouds, bruised and low. She pulled her jacket close, turned a corner, and didn't head home. Instead, she boarded the crosstown bus toward the hospital. No destination felt clearer. Lily was sitting up in bed when Emily arrived, a worn paperback in her hands and a bowl of Jell-O untouched on the tray. Her face lit up. "You're late." "I know," Emily said, leaning to kiss her forehead. "Did he make soup again?" "No," Emily replied, gently brushing Lily's bangs aside. "Not today." Lily tilted her head. "You look sad. I'm just tired." Emily sat down in the chair beside the bed and stared at the white wall. That picture in Adam's garden was still burned behind her eyes, Hayes and Sons, immortalized in a photograph curated by someone who had helped erase it. Meanwhile, high above Midtown, Adam sat in his office. Lights dimmed, papers spread around him like the aftermath of a storm. His desk bore the clean, ruthless lines of wealth, but the folders in front of him told another story. Old investment memos, correspondence from a time when his signature meant numbers, not names. His father's voice echoed in his head, low and calm from a memory long buried. "You don't grow a company by feeling sorry for every corner diner, Adam. You grow by learning when to cut and run." Richard Stone had built empires that way. Adam had followed, obedient at first. But tonight, the cost of that obedience had a face, a voice, a memory of pain no press release could edit. He opened a folder one Emily would never see and pulled out a printed email, dated March 12th, 2017. Subject: request for extension on lease withdrawal, Hayes and Sons. The message was short, polite. It had been signed Margaret Hayes, head chef. At the bottom was the internal note, "Do not respond. Decision final." Adam closed his eyes. His hand tightened around the edge of the paper. Elsewhere. Emily stood by the hospital window. Lily had drifted back to her book, but Emily remained still, arms folded across her chest. She didn't cry. She didn't rage. What she felt was deeper, slower. A sinking that came from realizing a part of her past, something she thought was lost to nameless decisions, had always had a name. And that name was Stone. Later that night, a text came through. She didn't answer it, but she read it twice. "Emily, I didn't know, and that's not an excuse. I'm not asking you to forgive me. Just, if there's anything left I can do, tell me." She placed the phone on the windowsill and looked at Lily, who was now asleep. Then she whispered more to herself than anyone else. "You can't rewrite the past, especially when it was signed with your name." The next morning, Adam walked into Ryan's office at Summit with that same printed email in hand. "I need to issue a public statement," he said. Ryan looked up, wary. "About what?" "About a mistake." Ryan narrowed his eyes. "Adam, you realize what that would mean, right? Investors, the board." "I'm not talking about the board," Adam said quietly. "I'm talking about the woman whose life got rearranged because someone taught me business without teaching me people." He didn't wait for Ryan's reply, just walked out, the weight of his own last name heavier than any asset he'd ever held. That night, Emily got another message. "I used to hope my father would be proud of me. Now, I just hope I'm not becoming him." She stared at the screen for a long time before typing just 7 words. "I used to hope you were different." She hit send, and then closed her eyes, for the first time in weeks. Adam didn't show up at Bella Trattoria. No awkward glances through the window, no accidental deliveries of fresh produce. Just absence. A silence that felt louder than his presence ever had. Emily noticed. Of course she did, but she didn't ask, didn't say his name. She returned to work, folded napkins, refilled water glasses, taught another group of kids how to roll gnocchi without pressing too hard. Her routine became armor, until her mother held out the envelope. "He left this," she said, standing at the door in her cardigan, hands slightly trembling. Didn't knock, just slid it through and walked off. Emily hesitated before opening it. Inside was a printout, an email from 2017. Her mother's name in the sender field, the subject line request for consideration, Queen's location. Below it, a note typed in corporate tone, cool and dismissive. There was also a handwritten line at the bottom, not printed, ink slightly smudged. I owe you a reply. I'm sorry it took years. No signature. But the handwriting was unmistakable. Emily didn't cry. Not then. But her eyes stung, and she folded the paper slowly, like it might tear from the weight of what it carried. That night, she went to the hospital to see Lily. On the community board in the hallway, where updates were pinned alongside thank you notes and crayon drawings, there was a new notice. Effective immediately. 1 full scholarship for specialized spinal recovery has been granted to patient L. Hayes by the Summit Foundation. No press release, no ceremony, just the paper, simple, quiet. Emily stood there for a long time, fingers tracing the bottom edge of the posting. Her thoughts tangled gratitude, suspicion, pride, and something she didn't want to name. Inside Lily's room, the girl was asleep, her face turned toward the soft light of the window. Emily sat beside her, trying to read the same chapter they'd started the week before, but the words slid off the page. She looked at her sister's breathing, even and slow, and then back at the hallway. Her mind echoed with a single thought. This wasn't love. This was guilt trying to put on kindness, like a disguise. And still, her sister was going to walk again. The next day at work, Emily found herself pausing more than once. When she wiped down tables, when she greeted a customer, her hand went to her pocket more than once, feeling the edge of the folded letter she hadn't let go of since across the city. Adam sat at his desk, staring at a photo on his screen, an old image of Hayes and Sons from before the closure. A warm yellow light spilled from its front windows. A woman in a chef's apron stood beside a chalkboard menu, smiling. He didn't press print, didn't frame it. He just watched. Ryan came in, holding a folder. You're still pulling funds through Summit Foundation. Adam nodded. You're not going to say anything publicly? No. Then why do it at all? Adam looked at him for a beat too long, then simply said, because some things don't need my name to be right. That evening, Emily stood outside the kitchen after the last table was cleared. She pulled the hospital notice from her bag and unfolded it again. Her eyes ran down the page, to the bottom where Summit Foundation was printed. Her lips parted slightly, then closed again. She whispered to no one, don't soften. Not yet. Behind her, the kitchen lights flickered once. She didn't turn. The old house in the Bronx hadn't changed much. The paint still peeled from the window frames. The air still carried the scent of dust and furniture wax, and the lock on the back door still stuck halfway before clicking open. Adam hadn't set foot there in over 3 years, not since the paramedics had carried his father out on a stretcher. His voice silent, his left hand curled unnaturally against his chest. He stepped inside, alone. The living room was frozen in time. A crooked bookshelf leaned into the corner. The same family portrait hung above the fireplace, his mother's soft smile fading. Richard Stone in a suit too stiff for the occasion. Adam between them, barely 20, arms too tight at his sides. But it was the den that called him. The floorboard creaked under his weight as he crossed the room. On the desk sat a dusty recorder, half covered by an old insurance file. He picked it up, uncertain why, pressed play, a click, static. Then the unmistakable voice, deep, slow, and heavier than he remembered. If you're hearing this, I guess I'm gone, or trying to prepare for it. I made decisions in business I thought were smart, but the Hayes family, that one's on me. I saw the margins, not the people. I told you once, Adam never let emotions interfere. Maybe that's where I was wrong. Adam didn't move. The tape kept rolling. I thought power would protect us. It doesn't. In the end, you're left with whatever your name really means. He sat down, rewound the tape, played it again, and again. That night, under the dull light of the kitchen, Adam pulled out a blank sheet of letterhead. His handwriting started slow but steady. This time, no legal assistant, no Summit Foundation header, just him. Dear Emily, there's no excuse that can rewrite what happened. But this time, I write not as a CEO, just as a son, a man. He signed it, for the first time without flinching. Adam Richard Stone. At that same hour across the river, Emily was rolling out dough in the community kitchen. Her students were loud, tossing flour, shaping imperfect circles of pasta. She tried to keep pace, to match their energy, but her hands shook more than usual. When she reached for the basil, she saw her fingers twitch, and she froze. She remembered his eyes, the way he had looked at her in that glass garden. Not proud, not arrogant, but small, like a man finally seeing the damage from inside the shell of his own name. Later that evening, she called her mother, sitting on the apartment fire escape with the city lights blinking beneath her. If someone tries to undo something, but they can't change the past, Emily asked, her voice hushed. How do you know if it's enough? Her mother took a breath, then said quietly, You don't. You just watch how they live with it. Emily didn't speak again for a while. Instead, she reached for her phone. Her thumb hovered over his name for longer than she meant. Then she typed a single message. I haven't forgiven you, but I don't want to stop remembering you either. She didn't wait for a reply. The rain had stopped just an hour before the ribbon was due to be cut. The sidewalk still glistened with moisture, and the scent of concrete and citrus cleaner clung to the entrance of the old community center on Delancey Street. Emily stood at the front of the room, checking the trays for the third time, smoothing the creased corner of a welcome poster, heart thudding for reasons she didn't want to name. The place had once been a storage hall, now transformed with modest paint, secondhand tables, and a warmth that didn't come from the walls, but from the people inside it. The new sign above the entrance read, Hayes Kitchen, a place to begin again. She hadn't told many where the name came from. Only those who needed to know, knew. Children filed in first, curious, buzzing with energy. Volunteers followed retirees from the neighborhood, parents, a few students, and then Adam, wearing a plain blue t-shirt and a white apron that looked out of place against his posture, but not against his intent. He didn't walk to the front. He didn't bring flowers. No formal speech. He stayed near the back, handing out reusable cups, refilling pitchers with ice and lemonade, wiping a spill on the welcome table before anyone noticed. No cameras, no name tag, just him. Emily caught sight of him once between her instructions on how to fold dumpling wrappers. She didn't flinch, didn't frown, only looked, held that glance a second longer than necessary, then returned to her pan. They didn't speak. Instead, they moved around the same room like instruments in quiet harmony, one picking up where the other left off. She forgot the ladle. It appeared in her hand. He missed the cutting board. She passed it to him wordlessly. When a child asked where Teacher Adam was, she didn't point or call, just turned to look. Adam, at the back, smiled and gave a thumbs up. The child grinned wide. It wasn't dramatic. No apology, no tears. But for the first time, something inside Emily stilled, a kind of steadiness, like maybe some wounds didn't heal by being closed, but by being seen every day and still met with gentleness. She finished the lesson, talking about her mother's minestrone, the way it used to smell on cold mornings, the way the garlic always burned a little in the first stir. Her voice trembled just once. No one noticed, but Adam. When the session ended, the children crowded around the table, spooning soup into mismatched bowls. A boy named Julian, just out of surgery last month, lifted his spoon with both hands and whispered, "This tastes like winning." Emily crouched beside him and smiled. Adam knelt down too, bumping his shoulder against hers lightly. They didn't say anything to each other, but they shook hands with the boy, one on each side, as if sealing a quiet pact none of them needed to explain. After the crowd left, they stayed to clean. She wiped the tables. He emptied the trash. The windows steamed with the evening dew, softening the streetlights outside. Near the exit, tacked just beside the doorframe, hung a wooden plaque someone had nailed in place earlier that morning. Hayes Kitchen, a place to begin again. Emily ran her fingers over the carved letters, and when she turned, Adam was there, holding the last trash bag, waiting. The rain hadn't let up all afternoon. It fell in sheets, soft and steady, pooling on the cracked sidewalk outside the community center. Most of the kids had already left, their footsteps echoing down the damp hallway, their laughter fading with each step. Only one or two lingered inside, waiting for someone to pick them up. Under the awning out front, Emily sat on the top step, cradling a warm paper cup in her hands. The cocoa inside was too sweet, slightly gritty with unmelted sugar, but it had been handed to her by Noah, and that made it perfect. Adam sat beside her, knees drawn loosely, another cup in his palm. Rain tapped rhythmically on the metal awning overhead. He didn't say much, neither did she, but something about the silence between them no longer felt like distance. It felt like breathing. Noah, 8 and small for his age, climbed up between them and plopped down without asking. His jeans were too short at the ankles, and his backpack was a hand-me-down, the name tag from another kid still stitched inside. He didn't care. He smiled like someone who didn't yet know the world could break a person. He held his own cup with both hands and looked at Adam, then, casually, like it was the most natural thing in the world, said, "Dad, the muffins we made last week, did you like 'em?" Time stalled. Emily froze mid-sip. Adam blinked. Noah's face turned the color of his hoodie. "I mean, not Dad," the boy stammered, shrinking into his seat. I mean, Mr. Adam." A pause. And then Emily let out a small laugh, half caught in her throat, half real. She didn't tease, didn't scold, just reached over and tousled Noah's damp curls. Adam didn't laugh. He looked at the boy for a moment, then put a gentle hand on his shoulder. "They were perfect," he said, his voice steady. "Still the best thing I've tasted all week." Noah beamed. When he was called in by one of the volunteers to grab his umbrella, he scampered off, leaving behind his empty cup and a trail of something neither Adam nor Emily had words for. They sat quietly again, watching the puddles swell. Emily didn't look at him, but she spoke. Softly. He didn't mean it. But I didn't hate hearing it. Adam didn't move. She turned her head, met his eyes for the first time in a long while without building a wall behind hers. "I don't know when I started believing you," she said. "But I did. Somewhere between all the soup and silence. I just did." He didn't smile, didn't answer right away. He just watched her eyes open, unguarded, and something like relief breaking loose in the lines of his face. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small wooden box, no bigger than a fist. He didn't hand it over yet, just looked at it, held it a second longer, then placed it gently in her palm. "I won't be here tomorrow," he said, "but I want you to have this." She looked at the box, but didn't open it. Not yet. Rain kept falling. The morning didn't start with birdsong. It began with headlines. Emily was pouring coffee in the quiet kitchen of Bella Trattoria when her phone vibrated. She wiped her hands on a towel and tapped the screen. The article was already being passed around bright, bold, unavoidable Summit CEO funds personal love interests nonprofit program. The subheading was worse: corporate philanthropy or a conflict of interest. The photo used wasn't even recent. It showed Adam in a soft moment, smiling faintly, sleeves rolled, standing behind Emily at the cooking class, handing a child a spoon, intimate, unstaged, and now weaponized. Up on the 24th floor of the Summit building, the mood was not gentle. The boardroom was half full, but the pressure was dense. Natalie stood by the projector, her voice firm, her blouse crisp, her words sharper than her tone. "This isn't about love. It's about risk, reputational, fiduciary, and legal." Adam sat still, leaning slightly forward, fingers interlocked. He hadn't spoken. Not once. Ryan, arms crossed beside him, leaned in and whispered, "You know where this goes. You know what they'll demand." Adam gave the barest nod. Natalie clicked the remote again. "Her name's on the grant ledger. She signed it. She receives the goods, the exposure, the benefits. You're romantically involved. At best, this is negligence. At worst, I'm aware," Adam said, his voice breaking the static in the room. Silence fell. "Then fix it," someone near the window said. "Distance yourself. Make a statement. Reassign the funding oversight. Make it clear the relationship was incidental." Ryan spoke low but firm. "This isn't a courtroom. This is a board of trust, and they're losing it." Adam exhaled, slow, controlled. His eyes never left the windows across the table, where the morning rain blurred the city skyline into soft streaks of gray and silver. Meanwhile, Emily sat on the edge of her bed, the wooden box open in her lap. Inside, folded neatly and yellowed with time, was a letter in faded ink. The handwriting was tight, almost shy in its cursive loops. "To whoever reads this, if this reaches your hands, my son has learned to say sorry, not with his name, but with his choices. Not with his money, but with his actions. I failed to teach him early enough, but I pray I failed with grace." She read it twice, then again, in the hallway. Her mother passed by, paused, and gently placed a folded newspaper on the side table. No comment, just left it there, like a stone on a grave, back in the boardroom. Adam finally stood, all eyes turned to him. He didn't pace, didn't raise his voice. "I've heard your concerns, and you're not wrong, but you're not right either." He reached into his briefcase, took out a folder thin, unadorned, and laid it on the table. Inside was a simple document, typed and signed. "My resignation," he said, "effective immediately." Murmurs erupted. Someone cursed softly. "I built Summit to prove I could lead." Adam continued, "Now I'll rebuild what matters, to prove I can choose what's right." Natalie stiffened. Ryan looked away, blinking fast. Adam turned toward the door and paused. "She didn't ask for anything," he said. "Not once, not even now. But she's the reason I stopped hiding behind this name, and I don't regret that." He walked out without a final glance. Rain was still falling when he stepped outside. Somewhere, behind glass and wood and a letter never sent, Emily whispered, "Don't let it end here." The early October sun filtered gently through the awnings of the Lower East Side Community Center. There were no balloons, no polished banners, just folding chairs, long tables dressed with mismatched cloths, trays of hand-prepped food, and laughter echoing off brick walls that had once felt cold. At the entrance, a wooden sign leaned slightly askew, handwritten in blue marker. "If you've ever been looked down on, welcome home." It wasn't a press event, but the press came anyway. Mothers held toddlers. Retired cooks from Queens stood beside teenagers with shy hands. A few nurses from Mount Sinai chatted near the door. Ryan lingered by the coffee table, tie loose, jacket unbuttoned, face unreadable. Even Natalie was there, arms folded but silent, watching. Emily stood behind a makeshift podium and old music stand from a church down the street. Her voice was soft but steady. "We didn't plan for a crowd. We didn't plan for cameras. We only planned for real food, real time, and a place where people don't have to prove their worth before getting a second chance." The applause came quiet, respectful, the kind that ripples out, not crashes in. Then Adam walked up, no suit, no entourage, just khakis, a white button-up, sleeves rolled halfway, and something in his eyes that hadn't been there before, weight, and something lighter beneath it. Maybe peace. He looked at no one in particular, and everyone at once. "I used to think power meant control," he began, voice calm, "that if I could buy something, change something, fix something with enough capital or enough will, it meant I mattered." There was a murmur from the reporters in the back. He didn't flinch. "But then I met a woman who showed me that real strength is letting go, letting people see who you are when there's nothing left to hide behind, and letting someone matter more than your ego." He pulled a single sheet from his back pocket, folded, inked, signed. "This is my formal resignation from Summit Holdings. Effective today." Gasps weren't loud, but they were real. "I've named a new board, people who challenged me, pushed me, disagreed with me when it counted. Ryan, Natalie, others who know this city better than I do." Natalie looked stunned. Ryan didn't smile, but his shoulders dropped a little, as if breathing for the first time in weeks. Adam looked down, then up. I'm not leaving because I lost. I'm leaving because I finally know what's worth keeping. He stepped away from the microphone without waiting for applause. Behind him, Emily stood still, not reaching, not pulling away, just watching him walk toward her, not as a man who ran a company, but as a man who had nothing left to prove. For a few seconds, no one moved. Then one of the kids, Noah, small and certain, ran up and tugged Adam's hand. "Do you still make soup with us?" he asked. Adam knelt. "Every week, if you'll have me." The crowd didn't cheer, but it shifted something silent and warm. Later, a local blog posted a photo Adam and Emily sitting side by side on the steps outside, paper cups in hand, the wooden sign visible behind them. The caption wasn't dramatic, just a quote from his short speech. In small print near the bottom corner, "I don't need a legacy. I just want to be part of her world." The smell of warm butter and sugar drifted through the open windows of the community kitchen, curling into the crisp autumn air, like a soft reminder that not everything had to be loud to be meaningful. It was Thursday afternoon. The usual hum of the class filled the room, metal bowls clinking, soft chatter from kids trying to shape cookie dough with tiny hands, and Lily's light voice as she read instructions off a faded recipe card. Emily stood at the head table, her sleeves rolled up, flour dusting her forearm. Her apron was stained with smudges of cocoa and cinnamon. She wasn't performing or leading. She was just there, present, alive in the middle of something she never thought would feel like hers. Lily had just finished her physical therapy a week ago. She moved with care but less hesitation now, her steps steadier. Today, for the first time, she wore a volunteer name tag clipped to her shirt. The kids had drawn a heart around her name with a red crayon. One small boy tugged on Emily's apron. "Miss Emily," he said, "where's Mr. Blake?" Emily looked up, blinking once. Her eyes scanned the kitchen. He wasn't inside. Then she turned toward the window, out in the courtyard, under a turning maple tree. She saw him. Adam stood alone, his apron hanging loosely around his waist. It was the one the kids had painted for him, a grinning yellow face and uneven handprints in every shade of marker. He held a tray of cooling cookies and a folded towel under one arm. A few leaves fell around him as he glanced toward the window. Their eyes met. He didn't smile wide. He just nodded. Emily didn't say anything. She wiped her hands, set the spoon down, and walked out. She didn't rush. Neither did he. When she reached him, he lifted the tray slightly. "They said these are for after class," he murmured, "but I figured we could test one." She chuckled softly, took one, and bit. "Still a little too much nutmeg," she said. He didn't argue. He didn't try to explain. Instead, he reached into his bag and pulled out a small, square wooden box, the same one she'd returned to him weeks ago, the one that once held a memory and a reckoning. He opened it. Inside was a ceramic figure. It was simple, hand-molded, unpainted. A woman with an apron, a small girl beside her, not ornate, not perfect, but unmistakably them. Beneath the figure, folded gently like something sacred, was the same letter she had read weeks ago, but now it was tucked under glass, protected, not hidden, and placed back into her hands. On the bottom of the sculpture, someone had etched a line. "Home is not a place. It's where we choose to stay." Emily looked at it for a long time. Then she looked up. He didn't say "I love you." He didn't have to. He simply said, "I'm not going anywhere." And she nodded not as agreement, but as a knowing. Later that day, they stood side by side, handing out cookies on paper towels, helping Lily tie her apron tighter, cleaning spills, and laughing at the flower storm Noah accidentally caused near the sink. Outside, the sun leaned low on the horizon. They didn't need to match. They didn't need to erase the past. They just had to walk forward in the same direction. The tray still sits by the window, with a single cup of tea no one ever claimed. It's not about the tea. Of course it never was. It's about the seat that stayed open long enough for someone to return, or at least to be remembered. Some people build bridges not with grand gestures, but by simply refusing to leave when it would have been easier. And sometimes, what heals us isn't a promise. It's presence, quiet, steady, unmistakable. Maybe that's what home really means.